Good morning, everyone, and welcome at this webinar in which we are launching the report, How Can Europe Fill the Clean Heat Gap? So did you know that 3 out of 4 households in the EU still rely on fossil fuels for their heating? So therefore, it's crucial that all of these switch to clean heat for the EU, also to meet its climate and renewable heating and cooling targets, and of course also to increase its energy security and affordability. But which European countries are leading the way and who is trailing behind? This is what you will discover today in the analysis of the Clean Heat Coalition that we will present today. I am Josephine van Beeselare. I'm head of EU Affairs at the European Heat Pump Association, and I welcome you all on behalf of the Clean Heat Coalition. This coalition consists of a number of associations and organizations. It's the Copper Institute, Euro Heat and Power, Solar Power Europe, the European Climate Foundation, and the European Heat Pump Association. And as a coalition, we advocate for more affordable, accessible, and climate-friendly heat for households across Europe. And we call for political action in support of every European's right to clean heat. Because solutions such as heat pumps, district heating, solar thermal, solar PV, they are already delivering heat to many homes, but now they need to become affordable, attractive, and also accessible for all households. The report that we launched today gives an overview of the current status of clean heat in 12 member states and recommendations on how to accelerate the clean heat rollout at EU and national level. If we take a quick look at the agenda on the next slide, you can see that the first person we will hear from is Jessie Glicker from Trinomics, and she will present the independent study that Trinomics did on this. Then afterwards, we will have Andras from Euro Heat and Power, who will give the summary of the main policy recommendations of the Clean Heat Coalition that the Clean Heat Coalition made based on the study of Trinomics. Afterwards, we will have a reaction from the European Commission, from Mathieu Balu, and then we will close with a moderated discussion among 3 national experts. And of course, there's also time for a Q&A. So for the public, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and then we will see if we either answer them immediately after the presentations, or if time doesn't allow for that, we will keep them until the end, until the Q&A. So let's start with the first speaker, with Jessie. Jessie Glicker is a consultant at Trinomics based in the Brussels office, and she focuses on energy efficiency, in particular in the built environment. And prior to Trinomics, she was at the Buildings Performance Institute Europe, where she focused on innovation in the building sector. She's originally from the US, but based in Brussels, and focuses both on European and international energy efficiency topics. So Jessie, the floor is yours to present the Trinomics study.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for that kind introduction. I was part of the team that worked on the survey, so I will go to the first slide. I was part of the team that worked on the survey and the study that the report that is being launched today is based on. So apologies, I'm a bit under the weather, so my voice is is not great, but we should be fine. So without further ado, the presentation overview for what I'll be discussing today is outlining the work we conducted. The work also included 3 deep dives, but for the sake of time today, I'll just focus on the high-level methodology and key messages of the survey that are more thoroughly outlined in the report. So we'll do a brief introduction to what we conducted, the member states included, and then the key messages broken up into 3 sections: making clean heat the norm, ensuring clean heat is affordable to all, addressing the barriers to clean heat deployment, and then the overall conclusions. So taking a bit of a step back, a brief introduction to Trinomics and who we are. Trinomics is a consultancy focused on 3 areas: energy, climate change, and environment. We work across the EU, but have several international projects and clients as well. Our main offices are in Paris, Brussels, and Rotterdam. As mentioned, I'm coming to you from Brussels today with the heat on because it's still quite chilly for this time of year, highlighting how important this conversation is. So just a bit more on our three key work streams. Our energy and climate projects focus on energy markets and infrastructure, decarbonization projects, and energy and climate policy. We have a new green finance team, as well as an environment team focused on environmental projects. Oh, all right. Now back to the study. The purpose of the work was to offer a snapshot of clean heat implementation. So we surveyed 12 countries, and we talked to and we surveyed and interviewed and conducted an analysis of these 12 countries, which are shown on the map. And as mentioned, we did a deep dive for Poland, Germany, and Italy. So those are the countries in orange. Overall, we had to do a simplification of the position of each member state. So we needed to be able to make the information comparable. Therefore, some of the policy instruments underway or recently inactive have maybe changed since the time of implementation when the survey was conducted in December and January, December of 2023 and January 2024. So a bit about the methodology. The study involved the survey of national contacts at various associations within the member states focused on. This included heat pumps and district heating associations, as well as energy agencies and several other contacts nationally. A few of the contacts are listed here on the slides, but overall, we reached out to about 30 stakeholders for survey responses, about 2 or 3 per country surveyed. And then we had a look at all of the responses and solidified them and conducted the analysis based on those responses. So the survey contained 18 questions split into 3 categories: the status of mainstreaming clean heat, ensuring affordability, and addressing barriers to clean heat. For the questions, keeping in mind that we were looking at a high-level overview, we wanted to ensure comparable results. Therefore, we focused on really yes or no questions, so that we could have a qualitative study in nature, so not very quantitative, and looking at the overall high level. We also added a response for underdevelopment and partially in place measures. Each question, therefore, each response had a weighted score to provide the overall score an overall score per member state. So full compliance or implementation of a measure or in response to a question had 1 point, and partial implementation or support had half a point, and under development as well had half a point, and then no implementation was received a score of 0. So moving on to the key messages. So looking first at making clean heat the norm. On an encouraging note, half of the member states surveyed, so 6 of the 12, have timelines for phasing out fossil fuel heating, and have already proposed or implemented laws to cease the installation of fossil fuel-only boilers. To support the fossil fuels, to support phasing out fossil fuels, many national governments are providing targeted technical support and assistance to consumers and end users via initiatives like one-stop shops and comprehensive renovation guidance. Overall, 9 of the countries surveyed offered some form of technical assistance, and 2 offered partial support. Despite technical support measures underway, many of the respondents cited that there's still a need for better guidance to help decision makers initiate the transition. So much of the current assistance is accessible post-decision making after the purchase and installation of a clean heat solution. Therefore, there remains a need to provide information upfront at the household level, so to provide information beforehand for making the switch to clean heat. Only 4 countries have readily available information to all households upfront on making the switch. And finally, while most countries do provide public financial assistance to alleviate the high upfront cost of clean heating systems, the support was cited as often being too limited to make clean heating systems sufficiently attractive. So most countries only subsidize the heating system itself and do not support other measures such as the installation or interoperability measures. So for example, in the case of heat pumps and PV Only respondents from Poland and Spain indicated that financial support to upgrade the electrical system of the building is available. There was a situation in Poland where we did a further deep dive regarding what information was available as considered a best practice. And then for other measures, such as comprehensive building renovation, this was only subsidized in 6 member states. And finally, heat and electricity storage further enablers of the energy transition are supported in 5 and 4 countries, respectively. So then on to the key issue of ensuring that clean heat is affordable for all. A key factor here, so looking at deeper at the financial situation, an important limitation to clean heat solutions, and in particular heat pumps, is the price ratio between electricity and gas and other fossil fuels. If the national cost ratio is considered too unfavorable toward electricity, heat pumps will not deliver financial savings. So to make heat pumps fully viable and to ensure cost effectiveness of the support mobilized for heat pumps, the operational cost of heat pumps has to become relatively low compared to fossil fuel alternatives. So the price ratio for the 12 surveyed countries is included in the graph here on the slide. Hopefully it's visible, as well as the EU average. So as mentioned, the key need here is a reduction in the price of electricity relative to gas, heating oil, or coal. In most countries, typical household electricity prices, due to higher wholesale prices, but also taxes and levies, are currently significantly higher for electricity per kilowatt hour than for gas or heating oil. This high electricity to fossil fuel price ratio not only makes the switch to electrical alternatives unattractive, but also increases the amount of subsidy needed to make heat pumps sufficiently attractive. Therefore, lowering the price ratio is an important consideration for making clean heat solutions, in particular heat pumps, more attractive. In the 12 countries looked at, the price ratio in Denmark, Germany, and Poland were the highest. The threshold we used here was 3.6, and this is based off of the average efficiency difference between heat pumps and fossil fuel boilers. In other words, above this threshold, the operational fuel cost of heat pumps are higher than for fossil fuel heating. And then a second financial consideration for heat pumps is the high upfront costs. So this is including the purchase and installation costs, which makes it less attractive for many households. So 10 out of the 12 countries surveyed indicated that nationally there is some subsidy support in place to address this. And then regarding district heating, only half of the countries indicated the existence of support schemes in their countries. So finally, moving on to the overall addressing the barriers to clean heat deployment, the final category of the survey. Looking at the overall efforts to address the national obstacles to clean heat implementation, the overall picture is varied, but relatively optimistic. So more than half of the countries addressed, including the Czech Republic, Denmark, Finland, France, Italy, Lithuania, and Sweden, have already mandated local and regional authorities to formulate local heating and cooling plans. This is for municipalities with a population greater than 45,000, in line with the revised Energy Efficiency Directive. These plans include investment strategies, roadmaps for implementation, assessment of current heating situations nationally, and a detailed overview of the local energy systems. For the rest of the countries, such planning is underway. The majority of countries offer specialized training programs to enhance the skills of professionals in the clean heat sector. But one significant and ongoing challenge cited by all of the member states that remains is the complex administrative process for clean heat installation. So most of the countries, again, indicated that remains a barrier to be addressed. So finally, the key conclusions of the study. And again, in the report that's being published today, there's a much larger overview of the status and a look more specifically at where the countries stand in terms of these different sections and the surveyed questions. So on a country-by-country basis, Lithuania, Finland, France, and Germany exhibit positive conditions in their approach for clean heat implementation, with scores between 63 and 73, with Lithuania scoring highest. Finland is advancing in its efforts to eliminate fossil fuels and their subsidies, and is actively providing information and financial support for clean heat initiatives. Germany and Italy have scored highly in this assessment, although the overall cost effectiveness of clean heat remains a barrier. And some of the situation, for instance, in Germany, when we conducted the survey back in December of last year and January of this year, they still had fossil fuel subsidies in place. Those were phased out or planned to be phased out in March of this year. So slightly varying updated situation. So overall, there's a wide range of scores across the member states surveyed, with an overall average score of 52. However, factoring in all of the partially and underdevelopment responses, in the upcoming 1 to 2 years, this status could be quite different. If all of the partial and underdeveloped measures are put into place, the collective average would increase to 63%. So that is an overview of the information that you will be seeing in more detail in the report coming out today. So thank you very much, and I will conclude with that.
Thank you very much, Jessie. We have a few more minutes, so I would look. I see there's one question in the Q&A, and the question is, does the calculation of break-even COP account for the CapEx component of the heat pump? Slide 10. So,
is it possible to go back to...
Yeah, it's on slide 10. So now we see 12, so 2 before.
Okay, so the question, does the calculation of a break-even COP account for the CapEx component of the heat pump? I will have to follow up on that question because I have to look at what is included, and if the CapEx component of the heat pump is factored in. I don't believe so, but I can reply more fully afterwards with a breakdown of the data.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a question of Andreas. What makes the assessment for Lithuania so positive?
Very good question. So overall, and just looking at the overall scores for the different components and the different questions in Lithuania, they indicated the most measures that were underway or being implemented. So in terms of provisions to ease and accelerate administrative procedures, dedicated training programs, having local and regional heating plans in place or underway. So they had the most measures either actually implemented or on their way to being implemented. So in the report today that's coming out, there's more fully answers to, there's the responses to all of these different components and the 18 questions asked.
Thank you. There's a lot more questions. I suggest we save those for the Q&A, or in the meantime, maybe you can already answer in typing, but for sure we can address them later to also stay on time for the other speakers. Thanks a lot, Jessie. So now we will move to the second part, to the part where we will present, or where Andras will present the policy recommendations that the coalition has drawn from this study. So Andras studied environmental engineering, and afterwards he joined the Green Group in the Parliament, where he worked with the ITRE Committee on Energy and Industry Policies. And now he's a policy advisor at Euroheat and Power, which is the Association for Sustainable District Heating and Cooling. So I give the floor to Andras to present the policy recommendations.
Thank you, Josephine. Good morning for everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Jess for this very good work on the analysis on this survey. It is very timely, and the results tell us a lot. So let's see. I would like to start talking a bit more about why we need to talk about heating of households. As you can see, buildings consume 40% of the final energy of the EU, which generates 36% of all EU's emissions. Of all this energy consumed, 80% is used for space heating, space cooling, and also water heating. So that's a big portion. And we see that 75% of all of these households are still tied to fossil fuel heating systems, mainly individual gas boilers. And we also noticed that until the recent energy crisis, many households didn't even realize how their home is heated. We know that besides decreasing the energy bills and the emissions, clean heating can also decrease the demand and the energy demand. So there are many positive aspects what we could gain by developing clean heating. And in order to support the decrease of all of these numbers, we created the Clean Heat Europe Coalition, where heat pumps, solar and district heating and cooling using renewable sources like geothermal or waste heat can work together, and we are all represented in this coalition. And we all want the heating and cooling sector to be decarbonized. One could say that we are concurrents, but we are partners, and we can all contribute to this transition jointly. The Trinomics report found that policies under the European Green Deal, including measures to advance the phase out of fossil fuel heating and to decrease and to increase energy efficiency and the share of renewable heating in buildings, have begun to decrease the to decarbonize the heating sector. So the decarbonization already started. However, the report outlined that there is further need for more robust policy framework and greater policy consistency to accelerate the transition. To fill this gap, the coalition developed a report which is based on actual findings of the Trinomics analysis, which represents a wide range of clean heat solutions and describe their current state of play in the sector. This report also maps the current policy background that is supporting the sector, and it also identifies what can be done to fully grasp the clean heat opportunity to reach climate goals and make clean heating affordable and accessible for households across Europe. Now that we have only 1 month before the European elections, our main message is that the next European Commission and the national governments must seize this opportunity to fill the clean heat gap by making clean heating and cooling a priority, which will strengthen the European industry, reduce EU greenhouse gas emissions, and freeing the EU households from their dependency on fossil fuels. And to highlight few of the recommendations of the report, I will present you the main findings, starting with the policy support. As just highlighted, only in 6 countries out of the 12 member states agreed to a timeline to phase out fossil heating. So the EU needs to disincentivize the sale of new fossil fuel boilers through eco-design rules that phase out the sale of standalone fossil fuel boilers as soon as possible, and rescale the energy label for heating appliances to give more visibility to the best performing products and solutions, which could be individual and also centralized. They have to be equal. We have to create a level playing field between them as well. Recently, we saw that this can be a very sensitive recommendation. We totally understand that. However, the market needs a clear signal, and during the transition, we will have to make sure that the consumers are shielded against any increases. that will be at a later recommendation at the finance support part. We also asked the Commission to encourage the uptake of clean heating technologies through clean heating standards, to present the long delaying heat pump action plan, but also to revise the EU heating and cooling strategy, which was introduced back in 2016 before the European climate law or even the COVID and the energy crisis. The Commission should develop a clean heating and cooling targets and action plans, and mandate member states to include them in the national energy and climate plans and in the national building renovation plans as well. In order to provide financial support for the heat decarbonization, the EU have to ensure just transition by swiftly implementing the emission trading system too, and the social climate fund in order to link fossil fuels with their environmental damage and support households in the energy transition. We need to set social safeguards to offset the impact of ETS2 on households. We also need to ensure that carbon pricing revenues from ETS1 and also to aid vulnerable groups in the green transition, such as supporting renovations and the switching to clean heating solutions. The design of the ETS1 and 2 should ensure a level playing field between individual and central heating systems, so the market can develop properly. Then national governments have to support consumers in the switch to clean heating with targeted financial schemes and adequate subsidies to enable households, especially lower income, to afford the upfront cost. This would prevent vulnerable households from being locked into fossil heating technologies. We see across the member states that the upfront cost of the capex of the change of the heating system is a big barrier for many households. Thanks to the Energy Efficiency Directive, municipalities above 45,000 citizens will have to develop local heating and cooling plans, which is great. But we need to ensure that the EU needs to ensure incentives and funding for clean heating and cooling solutions or building renovations that the consumers to adopt the most cost and climate efficient solutions for each district or city neighborhood. So based on the local heating and cooling plans, the cities have to adapt financial support based on these plans to ensure that it's efficient and used. National governments also have to make clean heating the most attractive financial choice for consumers compared to gas, oil, and coal. High operating cost of individual and large-scale heat pumps in some countries are due to high taxes and levies on electricity, a lack of carbon pricing, and a lack of incentives for consumers to make the most of the flexibility and renewable energy offered by heat pumps and district heating. So for this, as an immediate measure, policy must aim to reduce the cost of electricity for residential, commercial, and also industrial applications. There are also many recommendations on technical support. For example, we call on national governments to set requirements for new and renovated buildings to be equipped with hydronic and air-based heating distribution systems, which are suitable for low-temperature heat sources and solutions such as district heating and cooling and heat pumps. We also call to include requirements to upgrade electrical installations during renovation works. Without adequate electrical installations, the installation of a heat pump, a solar panel, EV charging, or battery storage are not possible. Hence, this is very important. And as just highlighted also, only 4 countries out of the 12 analyzed member states have flexibility schemes available for demand-side flexibility via clean heating solutions. And for this reason, we also call on the EU to create awareness about the flexibility potential of heat pumps and district heating and cooling networks, but also PVs in connection with batteries, and their value for the consumers and the electricity grid. For example, by ensuring that member states implement the electricity market design directive to make sure that capacity remuneration mechanism and dynamic tariffs are in place that can help lower heat pump costs. Also to ensure that district heating and cooling networks can economically benefit from balancing the electricity grid with electric boilers and large-scale heat pumps. And also a very specific recommendation that member states needs to ensure that hot water stored in thermal storages produced by electric boilers and large-scale heat pumps, which provide flexibility and balancing services to the electricity grid when there is surplus renewable electricity, should be considered as renewable heat when discharged into the district heating and cooling grid. And last but not least, the national governments should establish dynamic electricity supply and grid pricing to create a powerful incentive for consumers who utilize electric boilers and heat pumps, or district heating operators with large-scale heat pumps. And the national government should also set requirements for all heat pumps to be able to operate within the smart system or be retroactively equipped to do so. A heat pump that operates within a smart system can adjust heating behavior dynamically based on an external signal without the user's input. And thank you very much for your attention, and I invite you to check the whole report of the Clean Heat Europe Coalition and read more about the recommendations.
Thank you very much, András. Indeed, thanks a lot for these recommendations, which are quite a lot, both at EU level and at national level. So if you want to read through them again, yeah, indeed, we welcome you to read the report. I saw it was already published now on LinkedIn and social media. You can also go to the website of the Clean Heat Coalition. So if you Google Clean Heat Europe, you will get to the website and you will find the report there. Maybe one of the colleagues can also put the link in the chat of today's meeting so people can access it immediately. And I'm sure each of the organizations involved will also refer to it on their own website or publish it on their own website. So yeah, I suggest we keep the rest of the questions again for the Q&A. So if there are questions, please add them to the Q&A box in the chat. Now we are, of course, very curious to see what is the reaction on this from the European Commission, from Mathieu Ballu. Mathieu Ballu is a policy officer at DG Energy in the Renewable Energy Unit. And of course, yeah, we would, of course, very much like to see many of these recommendations reflected in the next legislative period. Of course, we know the elections are coming, many things will change, but it would be nice to give us a highlight and your reaction to this. So I give the floor to Mathieu.
Thank you, Josephine, for the invitation, and big thanks to Jesse and András for the presentation of the report and of the recommendations. I mean, the first thing is that it's great to receive clear messages, but also to see joint campaigns shaping up around the issue of clean heating and cooling. Clean Heat Europe, yeah, you bring together industry, but also civil society. We have the Cool Heating Coalition, which is being set up as well. We see that the pressure is building around these issues, and the messages we receive are very consistent and very structured. It's very important, as you say, ahead of the European elections, and at a time where on our side we need to look both at the implementation of what we have in place and how to make sure that all our legislation that has been developed over the past years is actually useful and is actually put in place in a way that delivers, and looking also at the future priorities. So probably the first answer that I need to give to the recommendations is that the European Commission is fully committed to the rollout of energy efficient and renewable solutions for heating and cooling, and to the decarbonization of heating in the EU. There is a much stronger awareness, I would say, at the political level of the importance of these issues and of the actual substance of these discussions than there was maybe 10 years ago. And following the recent cycles of legislation under the Green Deal and the Fit for 55 exercise, the Repower EU exercise, we have updated our legislative framework as described in the report. And we have in place very strong policy signals for clean heating, including efficient district heating, including for heat pumps and hybrid solutions. So that already sets the path for gradually phasing out standalone boilers powered by fossil fuels towards ensuring that energy efficiency and renewable energy are considered together, ensuring that we have a system approach to the decarbonization of heating and cooling. More and more we look at planning. DG Energy is becoming more and more a planning DG. If you look at what our legislation is looking like, so we have, as mentioned previously, the energy performance of building directive, which looks at standards for zero emission buildings, obligations to install solar energy in some categories of buildings, which mandates member states to include in their national renovation plans the phasing out of fossil fuels in heating and cooling. So some elements are there, some elements are in the Renewable Energy Directive. You mentioned targets, indeed, lots of new sectoral targets which overlap but give the same signals from various angles. The requirements you mentioned also, flexibility services, requirements for electricity DSO and TSO to take into account the flexibility services that can be provided by district heating and cooling, and to actually implement those, so actually take them into account in the investment plans, in the planning of new infrastructure. Those are very important elements. Of course, the energy efficiency directive with the local heating and cooling plans that you mentioned, the pathway for the decarbonization of district heating and cooling, electricity market design. So all of these elements are there. There's the manufacturing side with the initiatives such as the Net Zero Industry Act, which includes also dimensions on skills. So the elements are in place, and whatever happens at the next EU elections, we have a comprehensive framework in the 2030 time horizon, with some elements that already go beyond that time horizon. So the next steps, and you say it very clearly as well. First of all, it's a full and ambitious transposition of that EU framework into national legislation, and it's good implementation. And that's always a gap in EU policy between what is there in the European text and how it is implemented in practice. And one of the challenges for us as European Commission is to make the political level understand that this is always a first priority, and that we have to work with governments. an extra challenge here is that a lot of it will have to be done at regional, at local level, and not only at national level. So this is something where we are really working on making it happen. We work with national governments, of course, but we also want to join forces with you to help us get into that local level as well. In terms of the topics, you really identified lots of topics that are clearly on our radar screen, be it the rebalancing of electricity and gas prices, adjustment of tax regimes, for instance, targets. I mentioned also heat planning, which is also combined with the targets to provide a kind of certainty and visibility of where we want to go as the system. There are lots of issues that were not mentioned explicitly, but which we are working on, such as the simplification of permitting, working with member states on boiler replacement schemes. All of these aspects for us really are a logical consequence and the good implementation of the framework that we currently have. The other big topic that you mentioned, you put it next to my name, that's great, just transition, affordability. Indeed, the real key to get EU citizens and EU consumers on board is to make sure that this actually results in lower energy bills. So all our actions have to have, as a result, the lowering of costs, looking at upfront costs, including the installation costs, and there, what you pointed at is the recommendations on making buildings ready for advanced systems is also about making installation simpler and delivering both those energy efficiency and renewable energy benefits. The other one, indeed, operational costs, the rebalancing of electricity and gas costs. There is an ongoing work on the EU Energy Taxation Directive. A lot is related to tax and levies at national level, and this is clearly a fundamental point. The last point is really about the next commission and what will happen there. Once again, this is very important as an input, both because it helps us identify clearly what are the main challenges for implementation, what are the potential remaining gaps in the legislative framework, or possibly things that we cannot easily address at European level, but where we can work with member states. But it also sends that consistent message that heating and cooling has to be at the center of our next priorities for the next commission, that it's a matter of decarbonization, but it's also a matter of affordability of energy for citizens, for consumers. So we hear that message clearly. And it will be important because you know that we have started the work towards 2040. The Commission produced a first paper on a 2040 climate target with a level of 90% emissions reduction, which directly and logically creates a big pressure on all sectors, but especially on the energy sector, because we know that the solutions are there, and we simply know that even if it's very difficult, it's still easier than, for instance, in farming, land use, and so on. So a lot of the work will have to be done there, and I think this is very clear, and so any input in that discussion as to what would be the best framework to deliver those very deep emission reductions that we need already towards 2040 is essential. So we have started thinking about that framework. Of course, at the moment, we do that without a guidance from the next commission, which will come from the next parliament elections. And we are at a very early stage, but any input from your side on that discussion is, of course, extremely important. So my concluding message would be, let's join forces on that good implementation, because you have the knowledge, you are able to collect the actual reality snapshot of what things are like at local level, at national level. And as one of the people already mentioned in the chat, getting that input from other member states would be fantastic as well. And the second one is, let's think together about what the next framework should be, what are the gaps, and what are the best tool to get there. So really happy to collaborate with you in that sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mathieu, for this really detailed and positive feedback, I would say. It's really good that you mentioned that several of the aspects mentioned are really on your radar, that you really see consistency in the messaging, and that many things are already ongoing and now need to be implemented. I think one of the most important things you mentioned is, yes, the heating, cooling, decarbonization need to be at the center of priorities for the next European Commission. Of course, first we have the elections, we will have to see. But yeah, we will, of course, as a coalition, keep working on that. And as you say, and join forces with you and work together with you to keep having that absolutely as a high political priority. Because even though we have a lot of those measures already in the Fit for 55 package and they are on your radar, a strong political signal on the decarbonization of heating and cooling and clean heat, it keeps being very important and something we work towards as a coalition. So thanks a lot. I'm just going to look at the chat if there's really a specific question for Mathieu, but that I do not see. It's more technical questions. So, okay. Then, thank you very much. And then we move on to the next part of this webinar. So after we heard the study and the recommendations and also the reaction from the Commission, it's time to dive into more the national context and the different specific technologies involved. And for that, we have invited three national experts on the different technologies and the national context. So first we have Arnaud Meyer from the French Heat Pump Association, AFPAC. Arnaud is an energy and climate engineer with experience working for EDF and also for an agency for construction quality. And since July 2023, he is the full-time employee of the French Heat Pump Association. Secondly, we have Birger Laursen. He's a master in political science and joined the Danish District Heating Association in 1994 as its manager of international affairs. He worked with a host of economic, regulatory, and political issues, and increasingly with also EU policies on heating and cooling. And since 1998, he's deeply involved in the Euroheat and Power Association. And important to mention that he lives in Denmark in a detached house with district heating. Then we have Stefanie Groll. She has a PhD in political science and also a master's degree in social sciences. She has, among others, experiences as head of the Energy Policy Department at the Heinrich Böll Stiftung, and she has been working for the Green Party in Germany. And since a year, she's head of EU affairs at Enpal, which is a German green energy company offering combinations of PV with batteries, heat pumps, EV chargers, and so on. So complete packages. So welcome to the three of you. We have different aspects, both from national and a technology level. So I would like to start with a more general round of questions on what is the state of play of clean heating in EU and specific countries and the specific technologies as well. So I would like to start with Arnaud. Could you introduce us to the state of play of clean heating, focusing on heat pumps, both at EU and the French level in specific?
Yes. Thank you, Josephine. Good morning, everyone. Let's see and let's talk about heat pumps. So the European heat pump market saw a notable downturn last year, marking the first reverse in sales trends after a decade of continuous growth. Across 16 European countries, which account for about 90% of the market, heat pump sales fell by around 5% compared to the previous year. We don't see the slide. I try to, yes, that's good. Around 5% compared, yes, to the previous year. This decline is particularly concerning as it disrupts the long-standing pattern of annual sales increase that we saw before. This decline is due to a combination of several factors that have affected both investors and consumers. The first factor is the shift in energy prices. Energy prices went on a roller coaster ride after the very high gas prices following the Russian-Ukraine war in 2022. The gas prices dropped again last year, making electric heat pumps less financially attractive, especially in light of high electricity prices that persist. Another factor is that the European economy has stagnated since the summer of 2022, with factors such as high interest rates, inflation, and overall economic uncertainty. So investment in construction and renovation projects has been discouraged, impacted directly the demand for heat pumps. Another factor is the backlash that we see against green policies, coupled with a reduced political ambition at both levels, on EU and national level. And it has a further impact on confidence in the market. For France, in France, the heat pump market fell by 2%. In particular, sales of air-to-water heat pump experienced a significant decline of 14% last year. It's in a sharp contrast to the continuous increase observed in the previous years. Industry professionals expect this downward trend to continue until this year. And there are also several factors to explain this. First, there are an uncertain economic condition and a crisis in new housing construction in France, characterized by the decline in housing starts. And in addition, the ambiguity and complexity of the new government incentive, especially for renovation projects, is further affecting the situation. And this lack of clarity and the complicated nature of these incentives creates doubt among homeowners and affect their willingness to invest in heat pumps. And furthermore, the instability of energy prices, as said before, adds another layer of uncertainty for consumers. So that's the situation actually for heat pumps in EU and in France.
Thanks a lot, Arnaud, for this overview. Now I'd like to go to Birger, also to give us a bit of an overview on district heating and cooling and how the situation is at the moment, both at EU level and the Danish level.
Thank you very much, Sofiane, and hello, everybody. And thank you very much for the invitation to speak here today. To give a little overview of district heating, the current state of play in Europe and in Denmark. Currently, there are, as also stated in the report, approximately 17,000 district heating networks in Europe, and meeting 13% of the final demand for heating. District heating is a very diverse technology, very diverse setup. It's obviously, due to its collective nature, focused on dense urban areas. But one thing you can say about district heating networks is that they are all different. They are adapted to local conditions, the building context, the sources for heat and fuels available locally, and so on. The current status for the share of renewable and waste heat sources in district heating in Europe is currently at 43%. If we look at sort of the distribution across countries, there are some countries with mature district heating sectors, high shares of the market. That are those countries are the Nordic countries, the Baltic countries, but also the Czech Republic, for instance. But what we're missing are some of the larger countries. The share in France, the share in Germany are not impressive, and should certainly grow. As I mentioned, the share of the heat demand currently in Europe is approximately 13%. But if we can double that share by 2030, that would also mean a considerable reduction in our gas consumption for individual heating. Something that, of course, is of importance, not just seen in a sustainability perspective, but certainly also in a resilience and more strategic picture. What we're looking at currently is also at growth of district heating, the energy transition, as well as the issues with the delivery or supply of gas has meant a lot of countries are focusing on the heating transition. France, for instance, hope to connect approximately 250,000 households a year to district heating. That is estimated by the National Association. The Netherlands, phasing out their extensive use of gas due to a climate agreement between the government and the energy sectors, hopes to attach something like 500,000 households in the coming years. Germany estimate by National Association that they will probably connect between 300,000 and 600,000 households a year. My own country, Denmark, and I'll return to the situation in Denmark a little while, we hope to basically phase out the use of individual fossil fuels, mainly by replacing with district heating and heat pumps. And in Austria as well, 350,000 new households are hoped to be coming onto district heating in the near future. To make these things happen, there is also a legislative EU framework. District heating has found its home in two articles in the European legislations, in the Energy Efficiency Directive and the Renewable Directives. And thank you very much for that. There are also other additional articles covering some aspects of district heating. But what we need to see a bigger growth of district heating at the European level is that member states also, and here we deal a little more with the implementation of what exists already in the European legislation, that we need to see member states taking a district approach to development in the heating sector, so that investments and measures and support, etc., are prioritized, so that we achieve an overall efficient allocation of investments and energy sources. And there, the cities and their heating and cooling plants are key. But that should also mean that we implement these plans and intentions at the district approach, so we prioritize collective heating supplies in places where that is the most socioeconomic efficient solution, and we ensure that people use individual heating solutions where that is the best option. We need also a level playing field between individual heating and district heating. Currently, district heating is included in the ETS. But in most countries in the EU, currently there is no carbon price for individual heating. That should be established. That will be established with ETS too, but it will take a long time before the price level of carbon is the same in the two ETS systems, and that certainly should apply, so that we have the right incentives to shift. We also need some de-risking instruments. Some of the investments to be made in district heating are huge. Investments in network can be mitigated through the planning approach, but also investments in some of the renewable sources for heating, geothermal, for instance, or large-scale waste heat projects do involve some kind of risk, and we need some kind of de-risking instruments to cover that. We also need at EU, national and regional levels some kind of heat fund to cover all phases of these projects, because as I said, they are huge. We need support not only for sort of developing projects or thinking them through, but also to make sure they are delivered and that there is support all the way through until their implementation, as well as for the investments that has to be made in the buildings that need to connect to district heating. We also need a faster and simpler state aid procedure, and we also need to make sure that we unlock the system integration between the electricity sector and the thermal infrastructures. District heating and electricity complement each other very much in covering the fluctuations in the renewable electricity production, as well as fluctuations in heat demand over winter. And then finally, we also need a very robust, comprehensive 2040 climate network. And indeed, here we especially need a clear, consistent heating and cooling strategy. The 2016 heating and cooling strategy is a broad description of the sector. We certainly need a heating and cooling strategy looking towards 2040 that not only describes the sector, but also ensures that action is actually taking place. If I can look at the Danish district heating sector, as you can perhaps also see in the report, we have a lot of district heating in Denmark, and that means that more than 69% of the population is connected to district heating, and 80% of that district heating is renewable or waste heat, which means the energy transition or the heating transition for 69% of the population is sort of taken care of collectively through the district heating. And we are certainly on our path towards phasing out fossil fuels in the sector. The National Energy Agreement, which is a broad agreement in our parliament covering basically both sides or the whole spectrum in parliament, wants us to deliver a truly renewable and carbon-free heating and electricity sector by 2035. And for instance, the aim is to phase out the use of natural gas in heating, individual heating, by 2030. And in the interim years, 2030 to 25, we can still use some renewable gas there, but by 2035, gas as a fuel, renewable or natural gas, should be eliminated in the heating sector and be replaced entirely with district heating and heat pumps in places where district heating is not feasible. I would say the main ask we have politically in Denmark for development district heating is a final date for the phase out of gas. There is some ambiguity from government towards declaring certain areas closed down, the gas net in certain areas to be closed down, making sure that consumers understand that their individual boilers have a certain lifespan of a number of years, and make sure that we do this in an well-planned method, so that we can roll out district heating or heat pump as we roll back the gas network. That is the main ask we actually have in Denmark. I think I'll stop here. I think I've probably spent my time here. Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot, Birger, for not only giving the overview of the current market, but really also outlining already the measures that are needed and the clear asks you have, which this last one is absolutely very clear. And I think it's reflected by not only the coalition partners, but probably also many people at national level as well. Thanks for that. Now I would like to pass the floor to Stephanie Groll for the same. Of course, PV is not directly a clean heating technology, but it can be coupled, for example, with heat pumps. So we would like to also see how the rollout or what is the current status of PV and the coupling with clean heating, both at EU and German level. So I give the floor to you, Stephanie.
Good morning, and thank you, Josephine, for inviting me. I was asked to give a brief overview of the German state of play when it comes to clean heating. So I will in the first round, I will just talk a little bit about some central legislation for heating in Germany. And in the second round, I will give some examples on how we are rolling out heat pumps in Germany and what practical problems we encounter and how we try to solve them with our own workforce, with our payment plans, and so on. So Enpal started in 2017 as a solar company, and the idea was to sell and rent solar panels and make it really easy for citizens to put PV panels on the rooftop. Now we are building climate neutral homes. We provide full service for the installation and maintenance in residential homes. Our products, heat pumps, PV systems, EV charging, and home energy management systems are for rent. You can buy them, but there are also payment plans available. And this is maybe a first insight or a policy recommendation to the people in charge here. When national governments or European governments or even on state level, when you draft support schemes for consumers, please bear also in mind that there are a lot of consumers that don't have the capital or they don't want to pay all the upfront costs. So they want to work with a contractor or with a leasing company like Enpal and make sure that these support schemes are also eligible for non-traditional buyers and owner-occupied models. So what is the state of play for clean heating in Germany? Can you see that Building Energy Act slide?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so I think one of the central legislations, piece of legislation in Germany currently is the Building Energy Act. It was passed last fall after a very painful political process. There I see some German names in the participants list, so probably everyone has a story to tell about this very painful process. But now we have it, and some of the core provisions you can read here. So basically, one important provision of the Building Energy Act is that newly installed heating systems must be powered at least 65% with renewable energy. That only applies to new buildings in newly developed areas. And there are other exemptions, but that is like the basic rule. As of January 2024, all new buildings with new heating systems must have heating systems that work with 65% renewable energies. And that is, of course, a little bit of a red carpet for heat pumps. Heat pumps are, of course, very important for us, especially when you can connect them and you can couple them with PV systems. The Building Energy Act doesn't provide that someone will come and rip out your existing functioning old fossil fuel heating system. That was a urban legend and a myth and a piece of disinformation that was spread around a lot during the parliamentary discussion around the Building Energy Act, but this is totally not true. And the government also designed a support scheme. The national government provided a support scheme to help citizens with the fuel switch. So I want to say, Enpal, we are not like super huge fans of subsidies. We actually want our customers to generate revenues and realize energy cost savings as market participants. So when they have access to all energy markets and balancing markets, they can definitely create a lot of revenues and save energy with efficient devices and all of this. But of course, as long as these market conditions aren't in place, we of course happily provide subsidies to our prospect customers and customers. And so since heat pumps are important for us, we were also very interested in the support scheme for clean heating, integrated in the Building Energy Act. You can see here it looks really like generous subsidies. The German government actually supports the new installations for heat pumps with up to 30,000 K, depending on your income and what type of heating system you want to install. That's really generous. And again, here for us, one thing that was a little bit painful around this piece of legislation, that it wasn't clear how exactly all of these subsidies could be transferred to a contractor like us. Yeah, usually we use like power of attorney for this, but it wasn't clear how, for example, our prospect customers could get the speed bonus, and then this could be integrated in monthly payment rates. We've seen this before in other types of subsidies, where the legislator is focused on owner-occupied models, which is of course a traditional way of maybe buying something. But nowadays people just don't want to pay all the upfront costs, or they cannot. So I think it would be great if the European Commission could always think about those new models for rent and lease when they draft implementing acts or guidelines, and always make sure when they ensure implementation also of the Energy Building Performance Directive and so on, that we can offer support and subsidies for people with that don't want to pay upfront costs of 30,000 K for clean heating. Yeah, I think I leave it to this. We have a second round or a third round. If you have more questions, please ask them.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, time is running, so I will do a bit of a mix of what we had prepared and also what I see in the Q&A here. So all the three countries that you represent, so France, Denmark, and Germany, scored actually quite well in the overview or in the study done by Trinomics. And I saw one question also in the Q&A. So if you could highlight one measure that was used in your country, and you would say this is really a best practice and this really helped the rollout of clean heat nationally, and that could be replicated, for example, in member states where this is less advanced, what would be your key measure or recommendation where you say this had made a clear impact nationally here, and this would have to be replicated elsewhere? So Birger, you raised your hand already.
Heat planning. Binding heat planning. That's what we did. I'm always amazed about the discussion, that the heating issue is such an individual thing. I also question people when they bring up that argument. How is it with sewage in your country? Is that also, voluntary? Can you pick and choose between individual sewage treatment or not? Can you disconnect from your water supply? Exactly at what temperature does the obligation to connect to something change between being obliged to connect to cold water but not to hot water in networking, things like that? And if people are so obsessed with being individual gas customer because you're at the end of one gas pipe, then district heating should be just double as good because we have two pipes. So heat planning, binding obligations, that kind of thing, it politically is probably difficult in many countries, but it works.
Thanks, that's super clear. And I think also now with the planning requirements from the Energy Efficiency Directive, this will probably or should be rolled out in many more EU member states. Arno, what would you say for?
Yeah, I think that the same for heat pumps. We need to set a clear policy direction and targets. It's vital for attracting both demand and investment in the EU manufacturing and workforce. The publication of the EU heat pump action plan, which would have given a clear long-term policy signal, has been postponed from first quarter of this year to after the EU election in June. And yes, we have called with the EHPA to publish this action plan now, because yes, we need this policy. We need clarity and clear direction.
Okay, thank you. And is there a measure you would say at French level that was very helpful for heat pump rollout? Because France is one of the biggest markets. A French measure that you would say would work also good in other countries?
In France, there are several measures that make the success of heat pumps. I would say the products certification was important, like it's called NFPAC, and then the HPK mark. Also the certification of installers company called Calipac, and mandatory to get subsidies. It's work from 2017. We also have subsidies which are depending on the family income for the subsidies scheme MaPrimeRénov', which we have up to 90% of costs covered by this incentive, so that's important. We have also a specific credit tax for heat pump industry, also in line with Net Zero Industry Act. It's called the C3IV. And another measure is the creation of a center of expertise for heat pumps, and it will help all the professional and to get skills and to get information about technical information about heat pumps.
Okay, thank you. And then Stephanie, for Germany, if you can highlight one specific measure that could be replicated in other countries that was very successful.
Yeah, I think the Building Energy Act sets basically the right tone. I think also the measures in France and Germany, they sound similar. Also like the social touch on the MaPrimeRénov'. Yeah, so I think this is super important. And we need targeted support for clean heat pumps, and by target I mean really support renewable energies and not some false solutions, and really have a social component in it, just to increase acceptance and don't let anyone like attack it just because it's not social and doesn't have a social component. I think that's very, very good to see in France, and I think it's also in Spain also has a similar renovation program with the social components, and it's also what the previous speakers talked about. In general, I think it's super important to stay on the Green Deal course in the European Union, also after the elections, and then ensure implementation, so we can actually deliver this heat pump rollout on the ground. If I may, I would also bring in the topic of a qualified workforce. It's super important. It came up in the report. At NPAL, we have our own NPAL Academy where we train people in a fast-tracked qualification program, which really helps us to deliver within 6 weeks. And I know there's a lot of discourse and plans on the European level on how to increase the workforce for renewable energies, for installing PV systems, for installing battery storage and heat pumps. Heat pumps are very complicated, and it needs a lot of professionals. But there are also parts of the process of implementing, of installing the heat pumps that can be done by lateral hires. And it would be great to have more leeway to hire these people and to have more freedom and less bureaucracy for hiring people from non-EU countries, because these people come here, they want to work with us, and they can get a good job here, and then of course move further in their career. But also, what I read in the Net Industry Act about this is it sounds a little bit far away from what we do, but it's good that it's there. But just more freedom and leeway for companies would be great.
Thanks a lot. I suggest we now move to the Q&A. There's quite some more technical, detailed questions, but I suggest we first go more to the broader ones, and then maybe the technical ones we can also reply by email afterwards. So I have here a question from Pedro Diaz from the Solar Heat Association. So he says that in the study, Trinomics assessed the communication value of using flexibility, both electrical and thermal, with mixed results. Beyond communication, have there been interesting cases identified regarding the promotion of thermal energy storage? Maybe this is a question for Jesse on the study, or otherwise maybe for the national experts, how you look at this, the promotion of thermal energy storage.
Yeah, I can quickly say that based on the survey, no cases came up of this, but maybe on the national level, there are some case studies, unfortunately not covered in the survey.
Okay. Any of the others have examples on promoting thermal energy storage at national level? No, not immediately. Okay, then I saw another question, but it's already answered. Yeah, so it was Andreas. No, Birger, you have your hand up, maybe on the previous one.
Yeah, I mean, thermal storage is incentivizing. I mean, that is, you could say, on the interface between the electricity sector and the district heating sector, or the heating sector, because I mean we have lots of examples of thermal storages. When we had CHP as an extensive sort of heat production, we had thermal storages at every single CHP plant, so that they could produce electricity when the demand for that was high, store the heat, and then use it during the winter. During the night and the weekends, where there was less electricity demand, but still a heat demand. We have seasonal storages. It interplays most efficiently when you have alternative sources, when you have heat pumps, we have solar thermal and these things. So it's basically an instrument to be used in the interface between district heating, or the heating sector, and other sectors, I would say. Unless, of course, you have an abundant, cheap source of heat and a high heat demand. It is incentivized if we can create sort of incentivizing structures in all the other energy sectors. But in itself, producing let's say heat on some kind of geothermal heat, for instance, would probably be challenging to store financially. Technically probably possible. The incentive, I doubt, would be there, for instance. It's technically, we have them, they exist.
Okay, thank you. Then we have a question on waste heat utilization in data centers, ventilation from industry. Is this subsidized in the same way as solar or wind energy? Does anyone want to respond to that? Birgit again? Or?
Yeah, I could. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that would be something locally or nationally you would have. There's no sort of European scheme for this. I would say, would it need to? I mean, it also depends on the situation. It's much easier to utilize the heat from a data center or any other industry if you already have an existing heating network. And I would say if you want to subsidize something, subsidize the network, because then you have the infrastructure for data center heat, industrial heat, or whatever. Once you have that, as I wrote in one of my responses here on the Q&A here, it's for us the energy transition for almost 70% of the population is changing the heat composition at the thick end of the pipe, not at the thin end of the pipe where we have 1.9 million households. It's much cheaper and much simpler to do the heat transition when it's 400-500 installation and not 1.9 million. That's why we need the heat infrastructure. Once we've got that, we can implement anything you can find under the sun. We don't care. Anything, heat pumps, data center waste heat, sewage heat, what have you, we'll take it because we have the infrastructure. I know it's a huge endeavor to build that infrastructure, but once you have it, it's so flexible. That's the point of district heating.
Thank you very much. I also want to highlight that on the 13th of June, we will have a session in the EU Sustainable Energy Week. So Euroheat Empower together with the European Heat Pump Association exactly on waste heat utilization and how to further incentivize this and make it also more known, because not a lot of people are aware of the potential of waste heat, both using it offsite and on-site. As it says here, you have it in data centers, you have it from ventilation on rooftops of supermarkets and so on in industry. So if you're interested in that, keep also our website, social media. Keep an eye on that, and you can join those sessions. There was a question from Andreas on that was answered, but then he wants to extend a bit. Maybe you can ask it by opening your microphone, if that is possible, Andreas, to have the full overview. If that's possible, I'm not sure. I'm not the one controlling the technicalities. Otherwise, I look at the previous ones. So you had written that you wonder if it makes sense to do a general heating survey when you should probably distinguish between policy conditions for single, two-family homes and multi-family homes. Putting them together probably leads to a bias towards individual solutions. Do you agree? And then Birger had answered from his point of view, but Andreas mentions that it's really more, the question is to the Clean Heat Europe's report survey done by Trinomics. So maybe Jesse, do you want to respond?
Yeah, indeed. I think doing a much more detailed breakdown and where things are further categorized, and there's a more comprehensive survey conducted, including that breakdown and that split, would be beneficial. But that would be a much larger endeavor, but would provide a lot more insight, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, there was another question also. Why did you only look at 12 countries? Well, of course, we have to take into account budget, resources, timing, and so on. And we had to limit our scope of. It would have been amazing to do this even more detailed and considering many more countries. But we can always discuss with the coalition on next steps and maybe to extend this further. I think this is also maybe a good ending point of today's webinar. I see there's many more questions. I'm sure we can keep those and then reply to you via email. So yeah, thanks everyone. First of all, thanks Trinomics for this great report and the great cooperation with the coalition. And then thanks, of course, all the other coalition partners for the good cooperation as well. And the speakers for sharing their views in today's webinar. And of course, also the participants for the discussion and the questions. I can only conclude with the very positive feedback from the European Commission that we should join forces and that they will find this very useful, the input we gave. So for sure, our work will be continue to keep clean heating on the top of the political agenda in the next months and years. Thank you very much and hope to see you soon at one of the other events or webinars. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Josephine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.